Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Avodah Zarah daf Ayin. We're going to begin on Ayin Amud Aleph, the third line from the top. So we're going to have a lot of different stories of the question of whether some wine is usher or not. Hahu Beisa de Habi Yosef Bechamra d'Yisrael al Ovis Kachavim Achdal Adasha Ba'apeh. So what ended up happening, there was a house in which there was wine that belonged to a Jew there, and an Akim walked in, locked the door, the Havi Biza Badesha. However, there was this keyhole or some type of a window, so you'd be able to look into some of the area. So Ishtakachavim Dekoy Beni Dani, and he noticed that there was this Akim that was by the barrels. So Marava, it depends. Kol Dolahade Biza Shari, as long as the area where he could see through and actually see the barrels through this peephole or whatever it is, or this window, then it is mutter. And Rashi points out not just from Hana, but also it's mutter b'shtiyah, to drink, as Rashi says, the mirsas will naga, because he knows that there's a chance that the yid could be looking through this window. The haygisa aser. However, on the other side, it's aser even baha no. Question 3. So basically, Yosef bechamra d'Yisrael v'al akam achad l'dasha b'yapeh v'ika biza b'desha. There's a keyhole. Yishdakach akam dekoy benidani madin hayayin b'shtiya v'hana. So the wine, as we said, that you could, the barrels you could see. So the barrels that you could see, then it's fine. That Rashi actually points something else out. It says, let's say we're talking about a case, and we're going to see the next Rashi a little bit on this as well, where he has some connection to the wine. So because of that, kol dolahavi biza shari af b'shtiya, everything that you can see is you're allowed to drink. The high geese of a high geese also feel bahana. However, what you can't see is even us bahana. However, im nitvas lov kiganav hakol shari. In a situation where he would be considered like a ganav, that he has no cheluk in it, so it's always considered to be mutter. We're not going to assume that he did anything to the wine. Okay, so that's an interesting wrinkle that's added over here. And Rashi points out, which I didn't read, so that's only in that case do we say this din. Okay, that's an important piece of the Rashi. Okay. Hahu Khamra d'Yisrael. There was this wine that belonged to a Jew, the Havi Yosef Bebeis was in his house, the Havi Dara Yisrael Bel Yoina. So it was a 2 floors, it was a 2-story house. The top story, there was the Yisrael that lived, and the wine was on the bottom where the Ovid Kachavim was. Now, there's still, as Rashi says, the Yisrael the Yisrael was able to see, through some window up top, what was going on below. So Shama Koil, Tigra, they heard some type of noise of fighting. After they both went out, then Kadim, also v'kachavim achadav l'dasha ba'apeh. Then the Akim went back in and locked the door. So Amar Rabba Chamer Shari. Nonetheless, we still say the wine is mutter. Meimer Amar kihechi de kadam asoya na kadam yasi Yisrael v'yasi bel yena v'kachazili. So it's possible the Yisrael could always see the Akim from the top floor to the bottom floor where the wine is. So he's afraid to touch it, as the Yisrael may see. Who Ushpiza the Havi Yosef Bechamra de Israel. So it was this inn in which again there was this wine of Israel, and Havi Yosef Beidani. It turned out there was an Akim that was next to these barrels of wine. So Marava Im Nitvasalav Kaganev Shari Ilo Aser. And this is again kind of like the Rashi before in question 3. So if it's Nitvalav Kaganev, which means you have no right to be there, then it's mutter, because you're not going to be anywhere near it, because you know you have no right. And therefore it's okay. And you're not going to end up touching it. And therefore it's mutter even b'shtiyah. However, if not, if let's say you have a right to be there, you have a chelk of the wine, So you're more brazen to be able to touch it because you have an ownership of it. Hahu Beis Havi Yosef Bei Chamra. So again, there was a house which had wine in it. Beidani, and again, there was an akum found by the wine, by the barrels. So Rabbi, he says it depends. Islay lishtamute chamra aser v'lo. So if, let's say, he has a reason to be by that wine, then it's aser. Knows he's like has an alibi or he's an excuse. Says Rashi Loimer, L'kach nechnasti, I went in here for this reason. So samcha daite v'lo mirsas. So he could always justify him being next to the wine, and he won't be afraid. Dechi al lahach beisam yikara adaita unesuchi al. It's possible that he went in there to really cause problems with the wine. V'savar imish kechuli ishtamteno. That if, let's say, I get caught, so I'll have an excuse. I'll say, oh yeah, I'm allowed to be here for whatever reason. I'm mopping the floors, whatever. The Avagav debemaga hayayin leisle lishtemute aser. So we still say it's aser. The ilav and the suche al lomule the aisle. So then why did he come in? V'lo dami lomaniach v'chavim b'chanusa. It's not comparable that you have an akum with a store. In the Mishnah, the Hasim came with the Bershus aisle, since he came in with permission, the Adina Lomai aisle, we know why he's coming in. Kozman Shalhodiu Shemaflig Mutter. As long as we don't know that the Yid left, then it's Mutter. The summer Inaga Hashtasi V'chazili. As we said over there, that maybe the Yid will see me do it. Okay. So again, if you have some excuse for being there, it's going to be Yasser. V'ilo Chamer Shari, since you're too afraid to even be there. So you're definitely not going to be a toucher or contaminated. Meisvei, Nenoil Hapundik. Let's say you have an Akum who is alone with the wine, and Rashi says this Yachid v'chachavim im hayayin. Oh, Sharmulo Shomer Aser, or he says Sharmulo Shomer, then Aser. So in that case, we're afraid that maybe he went in, and perhaps he is going to cause problems with the wine. So my lavak v'daleis maybe it's even if he has no excuse to be there. Low, but isle that's when the wine is also, because that's only then, because isle shmuti, because he made up an excuse. But if he doesn't have an excuse, then we're not concerned. So he actually had a yid and a nakim. They were sitting and they were drinking wine near each other. Shama Yisrael koyel tzeluye bekanista. They heard the sound coming of davening in a shul. So Kavi also, so he got up to daven. He had to go to mincha. And meanwhile, maybe we should be afraid the Akim is going to touch this wine. So Amarava Chamer Shari, why? Because the Akim will think Hashda Midkur Leil Chamer. He's going to remember that he left his wine here, but Hadar Asi is going to come back, and I don't want to get caught. So you have these two people on a boat. And they end up hearing the sounds of a shofar on Erev Shabbos, and that's what they used to do to make a separation between Shabbos, Kodesh, and Chayil. So he heard this on Erev Shabbos, Nafik, but also he left. So Rabbi Chamer Shari. It's because Meimer Armid Akim will say again, Hashda Midkur Leil Chamrei V'Hadar Asi. He's going to remember the wine, he's going to come right back. V'imishum Shabta. What do you mean? How about Shabbos? It says Rashi, "Im time the samcha daite el chachavim mishum to asi yisrael b'shabbata ha'imeli aser giyur." So understand, he's not able to take this wine, right? He's not going to think about going back to get the wine. He doesn't keep because Shabbos. Ha'imel Rav ha'imeli Easter. So Easter said, who that's his name, Giyura ki havin be'ar miyuson. When I was in this place, Amrina and Yehudoi, they said, Luminatu Shabta, that the Jews don't keep Shabbos. Dimanatu Shabta, because they kept Shabbos. Kamikisi kamishtakhi beshuka. How many wallets would I have found in the marketplace? I found all these things in the marketplace, and there's none there. Must be because they're carrying on Shabbos, because they don't keep Shabbos. Well, Yadana, they don't realize this and Rabbi Yitzchak, as the Gemara in the Masechta Shabbos says. Even though this is obviously not the best situation, but without any other options of a nachri or a katan or a chamor, the Gemara over there says. So, and that's nonetheless the sphere one. Rabbi Yitzchak, the Rabbi Yitzchak, So you just go a couple steps and rest, and then a couple steps and rest. And Rashi says, so you never have constant motion of 4 almos, and therefore you haven't violated the Shabbos. Okay, so therefore he's not going to think that, he's going to maybe think he doesn't keep Shabbos. If he does keep Shabbos, okay, fine. All right, let's look at question TA22. TA22, Madua ha'akam soivim she'Yisrael in shemer Shabbos. So because im ha'yu shemer Shabbos, then all these kisim should be all over the place. The mistake is that maybe they did move them, but it's pachas medal amos. That's why it was allowed. B24, same question. I wrote ein mammon b'shuk b'Shabbos. I should say kis. Vein ma'virin dal almos b'rshus harabim shezet aser deraisa is deraisa v'hem lo yodim shiachol haylich pachas medal almos is them mutter lasois. Okay, so that's how I got that, and that's it. Okay, let's keep on moving. So I have the next story. Hahu Arya dahavi nohim b'matzarte. So you had this line that was roaring in a wine press. Doesn't sound very fun. And Shama v'kachavim, so Akam heard this lion. They're obviously scared. So Tasha Benidani, he hid by the barrels of wine. So Amrav v'chamishari, the wine's okay. Remember Amr kehechi did tashina ana, just like I hid. So possibly it shanami Yisrael churai v'kachazile. Maybe another Jew who hears the lion is going to run and also hide in the same place. Hanhu Ganvi, there were these thieves that salki la Pumadisa. So they were in Pumadis. They came to Pumadisa. Upischu chavisa tuva. And they opened up a whole bunch of wine barrels. So probably they made it tamei through Yain Nesach, because they were probably an akum. Chamer Shari, my time. Aruba Ganve Yisrael Ninhu, which is a sad thing to translate, but the majority of people in that area were actually who were Ganavim were actually Jews, and therefore, even though they had the desire, as we saw in yesterday's daf with regard to a Zaina, that maybe Yitzra de Avera, it was Tokev Lahu Yitzra de Avera, to want to steal, but Yitzra de Ainesach Tokev Lahu. So they don't have that desire to worship, to do Yain Nesach. So that's always mutter. So I be Avodah ben Ardav Yomi Shmuel Chamer Shari, the one who was mutter. Come on, Rabbi Lezer the Yomi Savik. So that's one answer. So I Avodah ben Ardav Yomi Shmuel Chamer Shari. So come on, Rabbi Lezer, different answer. Savik Bia Tahar. The Savik, whether you actually even entered into that field, we're going to say it's Tahar. Why? Did not. Let's say you went into a bika, many fields which are right next to one another, as Rashi says. And it was during the rainy season, says Rashi, Shazrihi, people plant there. The Ein Rabim Dorsinoi. So because of that, it's really not a Rishus Harabim, it's more like a Rishus Yachid, right? And because not regarding the dinim of Tumah. And we hold that when it comes to the dinim of Saita, who she was secluded, we don't know if actually she had committed Eishes Ish. But nonetheless, we say Safek Rishus Hayachid Sveiko Tameh. So therefore, it was Mimos like a Shamim, and you entered into this field, and we don't know the status of whether there's Tumah there. But Tumah Besada Ploinus, and one of the fields definitely had Tumah. I'm not sure which field, there's so many fields, I'm not sure which ones I went into. So Belezer Omer Savik Bia Tahar, Savik Maga Tahar. Tameh rather. So in the case of Savik Maga that maybe you touched, in other words, you know for a fact that you entered into this field, but you just don't know if you actually touched that Tumah, so it's a Safik, and Safik Deraisa L'Chumra. However, when it comes to, I don't know that I even went into the field, Safik number one. And then I have a second Safik, even if I did into the field, who says I even touched, so it's a Sfeik Sveika, and Sfeik Sveika we are Mekel. Which is why Rabbi Lezer says Safik Bia is Tahar. Okay. Safik Maga Tame. So maybe that's the reason why also there's a Safik, there's a Sfeik Sveik over here, right? Again, what's a Sfeik Sveik? It says Rashi, Safik Yisrael Safik Avcham. We don't know. Maybe this person is a Yid. We don't know if he actually touched. So over here, it's a sfeika. So our answer is low. Shani hasam kivan de ika de pachschi l'shumamayna probably sfeika. So in this case, again, if let's say there's money in the barrel, if not, then they probably just left. And therefore, it's a case of a sfeika. Says Rashi, okay, fine. So that's the point. That's not necessarily an answer. We're looking at question 4. Ma pasku Rabbi Shmuel umahatam. Okay, so over there, it's more of a sfeika than in our case. So Rabbi says it was Motim Pumadisa because Rav Ganvi Israeli. Shmuel Matim in Nardav because of Sveika. So Yisrael Savik Akum, and Imtam Somer Akum Savik Naga Savik Naga. So, but not necessarily is it the same case as the dinim of Tuma in the fields, because over here, maybe there's more of a reason to be Mako, because again, there's Yika Pit de Paschi, maybe he opened it up for money purposes, so that's a sfeik. In other words, maybe the only reason why he didn't know if there was wine in the barrel, maybe he thought there was like treasures in the barrel, and therefore for that reason, that's the reason why he opened it up. So therefore, it's more of a higher likelihood that he didn't actually touch the wine. Okay, Ayin Amid Hahi Ravisa. There was this Ravisa, Rashi's Tinaikas of the Chachavim, this young Oy Chachavim, Dishtachach Dahavi. She was found to buy a bunch of barrels of wine. Nikita Ufia Biada, and she had this foam of wine of the wine in her hands. So Omarava Chamer Shari, the wine's still mutter. Amar, you can maybe say Migaba Dechavisa Shekalte. Maybe she took the foam from the outside, but not from the inside. Biafal Gav Deleka Su. The Leica Tzu Amar Isrui Isramule. So even though perhaps you would say there's no more foam, maybe you can just say it just happened that way. So even though, again, maybe there's no more foam, so how maybe that she didn't take it from the outside, all the foam's still on the inside, so maybe that's just how it was. So again, for whatever reason, we're lenient, and Rashi says, why is it the case of Ravisa? V'dak Ravisa deinu yodas b'tiv nisach v'lo maser nasha l'minaga. She doesn't really care about this. But a Gedolah, we're more strict. But when we come to Ravisa, we're more makel. Okay. Hahu pul Musa. There was this soldier in the army, says Rashi, Rosh Hagayas, the Tsar Tzava, a very powerful leader, that Salakon Arda, Paschu Chavisa too, and he opened up a lot of barrels. So Kios Rabdi Momer Uvdahavi Kamei Rabbi Elazar. This story came in front of him, Vashari, and he allowed the wine. V'yadan, and we're not sure why. Even Shem Desavilok Rabbi Elazar, Diamar Savik Bia Tahar. Maybe it's like a case of Sveika, and maybe first of all, maybe it was a Jew, and even if it was an Akum who said Savik touched it. Mishum Desav Ruba de Azli Bahadi Pul Musa Yisrael. Maybe the majority of the people that were part of this particular army were Jews, and therefore, again, we're not concerned of the Yain Nesach or the Yid. Yihachi Hai Savik Bia Savik Magahu. So it shouldn't be. It's not a case of Savik Bia. It's a Savik of them touching it. The Kivan de Miftachi Tuva, since they opened up so many, Aim Adaitim Mamayna Paschu. Probably they were looking for money. Ukasafik Bia Dami. So they opened lots of barrels only to see if there was money in them, not to use as Yain Nesach. Because if they wanted the Yain Nesach, they would just maybe open up one or two barrels. Why are they opening up hundreds of barrels? They're probably looking for money. He Misu Baisa. There was this Jewish woman. Says Rashi before, Harbi Yosim Michtei Sarich Shtiasan, more than you need to drink. So Muchel Milsa Daitim Mayna Pischo. He was doing it just for finding money. Sayu Taridi. Okay. And it says Vadamu If let's say you have someone during the time of war that says el mutarin, because if it's the time of war, they don't have time to deal with the ayin nesach. So it's clear by the fact of their actions, it's probably what their intentions were was not for yain nesach. Okay, again, so he misubiyasa the masula iklida. So you had this person who is selling wine in a marketplace, and she was given a mafteach, Rashi says, a key, pischa to the opening of the chachamim. Some Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Lezer uvda havi b'mid Rasha. There was such a story. V'yamru l'masru el shmiras mafteach b'lvad. The whole purpose was for her to guard the key, but not that she was actually allowed to go. They were not allowed to go into the store, but again, just to watch the key. Omer by afanami tenina. I can also support this concept from that which we learned. Hamayser maftechot lama aretz. Let's say you give over a key to lama aretz, taraisav taharais. So why would it be tahar? Aren't we concerned that this am haaretz opened it up and contaminated? Lefishal maslo el shmiras maftech b'vad. The whole purpose was just to guard the key, and therefore he had no business going inside, and therefore we're not concerned about that he did. So hashti taraisav taharais. If that which is tahar, so yain nesach meboy, then we should certainly be lenient when it comes to yain nesach. Well, remember that taharis alimi yain nesach. It sounds like the din of taharis is more strict than yain nesach. Is that true? Did mar chatzer shecholka b'masifis. Let's say you have a courtyard which is divided into a small portion. Amarav taharaisav tameyos. In that situation, all the taharos we consider to be tamei, because there we are concerned that the am haaretz may have touched it because he has a chelik there. However, we're not concerned about the akum. So again, we see we're more strict when it comes to dinim of tumat tahara than yain nesach. Rabbi Yochanan, after harais of taharos, no, it still remains tahar. Meisvei hapanim shel chatzer, when you have the inner part of a shel chaver, belongs to the Talmud Chacham. V'achitzena shel am haaretz, and the outside belongs to am haaretz. Oisu chaver. So the inner person who is a chaver, is a Talmud Chacham, can be shaiteach sham peres. He can spread out fruits. Umaniach sham kalim. You can put his kalim there. Since the am haaretz won't go in, because since the am haaretz belongs to the outer courtyard, he has no business going inside. There's nothing in there except for the chaver's rishus. So since it's the chaver's domain, so the am haaretz is not going to go in there. So therefore the chaver can leave it out, and he's not concerned that the am haaretz is going to contaminate it. V'yafal pi. Even though it's possible that his hand could technically reach there, nonetheless it's not an issue. Kashal Rav. So this is actually a question on Rav. Says Rashi, Mikol Makam Kashal Rav de Katani Alphabi Shiyadai Shalom Aretz Migas Lasham. It still says it's mutter. So according to this, it shouldn't be a problem. But Rav said that the Taraisav are Tameya. So, but why? So Rav Shani Hasam Chinitvas Alav Kiganav. So in this situation, he has no right to go into the inner courtyard, so he won't do it. And therefore, he would look like a Ganav going in there. So therefore, that's why we're lenient. However, if we're dealing with a Am Haaretz, it's possible that he may matame it because he has some shaychus to the item. Tashmar shemigol aimer gagushal chaver. The roof of a Talmud Chacham l'mal, if it's above, migagushal ma'aretz oisu chaver shatech sham peres maniach sham kalim novad shalatehi yadushal ma'aretz migasel sham kasha Rabbi Yochanan. So he says that again, technically you're not afraid that he's going to go up there. But nonetheless, if he's able to stretch and touch his hands on it, then we are concerned. So apparently that goes against what we said before. So Rabbi Yochanan Shani Hasam the Islay Ushtemute. In this situation, Akam, as we said, can come up with some excuse why he's in that vicinity. Maybe Omer, you can always say Im Suri Kam Mitzra, that I'm just measuring my area. Says Rashi, Ani mechaben lamidas binyan shani roitza limdan lekach. That's the reason why I stretched out my hand. So therefore, in the event that you can somehow justify it, then we're concerned. As we saw before. Tashma, gagushal chaver b'tzad, gagushal amaretz. Let's say the two roofs are adjacent to one another. So Aisu chaver shatech sham peres maniach sham kalim. He's allowed to put stuff there. The afal pishya de shalom aretz megas sham sakashurav. So apparently, we're not concerned that the Amaretz is going to touch. So So I could always hold like Rav Shimon that said before. Rashi quotes, Yado Shalom Amaretz Megas Sham. Rav Loishani ben Shagag ben Shagag Chav Lamal ben Shava Loy. So there's a shita that he could hold like, and therefore not a reason to have a stark akash on him, because there is an answer. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Okay, we saw question 4. TA 22 about Shabbos, we did. TB 24, same question. Madua Akam 7 Yisrael and Shemer Shabbos. And then the next one is on tomorrow's daf. And question TC, maybe 25. Me'eza tam hitter rava asayayin mechavia sheniftachu al yidei genavim b'pumadisa. So it's actually the same question as I said before. I just didn't notice it, which is TC 25. So mamish the exact same question. TC 25. Either because Roiv are Yisraelim, or Ganavim are Yisrael, or because it's Mitzad Sfeik Sfeika, Safik Yisrael, Safik Akum, and even if it's an Akum, Safik Naga, Safik Lo Naga, and therefore that's why he's Mekel Adkan.